video is a combination of my 40 years of study of the published literature, as well as 30 years worth of patient contact as a colorectal surgeon. I'm not here to diagnose or treat anyone. I'm here for educational purposes only because no manner of brains is worth a good set of bells. Hey, it's Dr. Toker, your friendly neighborhood colorectal surgeon, and I am on a mission to educate the world in terms of gut health and the microbiome and how that impacts your daily life. I certainly hope you will join me on this journey, but you're going to have to buckle up, Buttercup. We're talking gut stuff. And wakey, eggs and bakey. Today we're actually not talking gut stuff. We're going to be talking sleep. We're talking neurologic stuff today. It's Dr. Toker, and it's good morning and welcome, and thank you for joining me on this bullpen. You know what? It is school season. Everyone's getting the kids back to school, and I know how stressful that is. And so I wanted to talk about one of the most important things to your child's academic success, and your teachers will thank you, and your child will thank you, is if you let them get a good night's sleep, teach them the importance of sleep, and put them on a routine that gives them good sleep hygiene. I promise that will be helpful for the rest of their days, not just as they are in school. So, and like all of my other lectures, this is sponsored by Super Patch, and Super Patch happens to have a pretty decent topically applied device, a little Band-Aid looking device that improves sleep, and it can be used on anyone at any age. We do caution young children if they like to put things in their mouths, maybe this is not the right thing for them. But if you've got a school-age child that is not likely to do that, then listen up. If you're an adult and you don't get very good sleep, all of these suggestions apply to you as well. Good sleep is critical in your life, whether you're an adult or a child or an infant, doesn't really matter. Your ability to fight off disease, to improve your physical health, have energy, focus, concentration, make good decisions, improved memory, manage your stress. If you're a school-age child is getting good sleep, they have a tendency to grow. They have a tendency to retain the things that they learn. They have a better ability to attain language skills, which for the young children is incredibly important. In the modern era, I would say that's probably important for all of us to obtain some language skills. Now, sleeplessness is not just a problem that happens to us as adults. It's very common in children as well. Probably half of school-age children and at least 40% of teenagers are going to struggle with sleep. And so this is a common problem, and the absence of sleep can lead to illness, behavioral disorders, difficulty focusing in a classroom, decreased academic performance, and more importantly, a decline in long-term learning. And so addressing the sleep issue is important, okay? Your brain is managing a lot of different aspects, all of the aspects of your life, to be honest with you. It manages your metabolism, that includes your blood sugar, your immune response, the ability to fight off disease, your weight, in other words, your fat storage, your body temperature, all of your hormones. When you are sleeping is a critical reset time for your brain. And so sleep is organized by your brain specifically. And I've given this talk in probably 3 or 4 months ago. We went into the science of sleep and all the different sleep cycles, and your school-age child does not care to know any of that. They just know they can't fall asleep, or maybe they wake up a lot. I know both of my kids have ADD, and so when they were young and before we really kind of understood what ADD was, they would fall asleep and then wake up multiple times during the night. And so then nobody was getting any sleep. And so it is important to know that A proper night's sleep is critical for overall health in all aspects of your child's life. When it comes to childhood development, their ability to pay attention, understand things, their mood, their resilience to stress and peer pressure, their vocabulary, their motor skills. And especially, I can remember when my son, he entered, he's going off to college in a week. Can't believe it already, but he's going to play rugby in college. And I can remember when he started in high school in Texas. I mean, sports are kind of important in Texas. He also went to a private school where academics were very important. And so both the teachers and the coaches impressed upon us boys need a lot of sleep. Teenagers in particular, they got to have the sleep. Okay. This is going to help them grow, help them resist peer pressure, help them focus in school, and just develop properly into adults. Your job is to usher that child into the world, kind of get them launched, so to speak. Teaching them proper sleep is important. Now, children who have sleep deprivation, and there's a number of different reasons people can get sleep deprived, but they can't really, their behavior is altered. They can't pay attention in school. Maybe they have anxiety or depression as a result of sleep deprivation. They may gain weight. So childhood obesity is a critical problem. That can easily be related to sleeplessness. Substance abuse, they can't sleep, so they may take medications to help them sleep, and then they can't wake up, so they might take stimulants to wake them up. This is not unique to adults. Teenagers will wind up falling into these same traps. Kids who are sleepy can injure themselves, especially if they play sports. And I highly encourage all children to engage in not only academic pursuits, but athletic pursuits as well as an artistic one, whether you're drawing or music or theater. So it's critical for the mind as it's developing to use all sides of your brain. And so you can injure yourself if you haven't had any sleep. And worse yet, your teenager who's learning how to drive might get into a car accident as a result of sleeplessness. So there's a lot of reasons, um, academic and health wise, that you want your kids to be able to sleep. Now, we've talked in the past about sleep and the microbiome, like what we call this gut brain interaction. The intestinal tract makes a series of different neurotransmitters. One of them is called GABA, and GABA is important for the initiation of sleep. So is serotonin. When you've not had enough sleep, that actually increases your body's cortisol and adrenaline levels, and those things can interfere with the microbiome. And then the microbiome in turn does not make enough of these neurotransmitters, and then it becomes this vicious cycle. So, as we had this lecture several months ago, we talked about gut health and sleep. This applies to even an infant that also has a microbiome. So does your elementary school age child, so does your teenager, as do you. So, gut health plays a distinct role in proper sleep, and sleeplessness absolutely can negatively impact gut health. So, these two things are definitely connected. I think I've talked in the past and that this is sort of how I got to know the owner of Super Patch, in our conversations, and one of the reasons he asked me to sit on their medical board and why I promote them very heavily, because I believe in the product. There's no medicines in it, but the gut and the brain are distinctly connected. And one of the ways to break a detente of my gut is injured, therefore I'm not making neurotransmitters, my brain doesn't work, and because my brain doesn't work, I don't sleep well, and then my stress go like that feedback, you can break that detente without medication. And we're going to talk about sleep hygiene, and then we're going to briefly talk about how the super patch can help you without medications, which is critical when you're talking about a child. You want to be really cautious in yourself, but in particular in children and teenagers, any kind of sleep aids. Now, sleep hygiene, what does that mean? We've talked about this very slide, in fact. The sleep hygiene essentially means that we want to do a series of different things to try to get your brain in the habit of falling asleep. So, an elementary school age child should get somewhere between 10 and 12 hours of sleep. A teenager is probably somewhere between 9 and 12. I mean, if I could get 9 hours of sleep on a nightly basis, I would be uber functional. I can function quite well on 5 or 6 hours, but my favorite is to get 9 hours of sleep, even as I'm not elderly, but I am in my mid-50s. I like that 9 hours of sleep. It's nice. I'm not too proud. I don't have to be a stud. I don't like not having any sleep. Your child probably doesn't like that either, and if you have a moody kid, it's very possible they're not sleeping well at night. So, let's spend some time talking about this particular slide, a list of things. The first thing that I think is important, and unfortunately, I put it at the bottom, and that is, not at the bottom, but sort of like halfway down, where it says right here, "Make a routine." Children require routine. They need a routine. Keeps them out of trouble. Your kids have ADD, a routine is critical because they have a hard time focusing. They forget things pretty easily. And a set routine, if you do it over and over and over again, becomes habitual, and you have a little less squeezing out of that ADD situation. So making a nighttime routine is super critical. Like, it is actually important that they have, a healthy dinner. Then they take a warm bath, and then they get their little jammies on, and then you read them a book, and then you tuck them into their little bed, and you tell them a little bedtime story, and you turn off the light, you put them in a dark room, and you let them fall asleep, and that's sleepy dodo times. It's bedtime routine. Okay, this routine is critical, and even for an adult, a bedtime routine is critical, right? So I might have my nice warm glass of herbal tea before I go to bed and a hot shower. And then I will lay out my clothes for the next day to make sure I don't have to scramble the next morning. And if I have any events that have come up between the time I got home from work and the time I'm about to go to sleep, and believe me, it does. I get called all the time. Things that I have to do tomorrow. Oh, don't forget to call Dr. So-and-so, and don't forget you have to be at the operating room at 5 in the morning, whatever the case may be. If I write those things down so I don't have to think about them over the night, that tends to help me sleep. So this is part of my bedtime routine. And if you don't have a bedtime routine for your kids because you're thinking they're just kids, why do they need that? Get into that. You'll see that those kids start naturally getting tired at the same time every night because you've instituted this routine. Preparing for the next morning at night before you go to bed also makes the next morning less chaotic. So that's a little hack that's incredibly important. Okay. Avoiding stimulants. I am shocked how many kids drink energy drinks. Have you ever seen that? It's like it's super popular, and I guess they learned that by social media and playing video games, all those guys or those gamer guys, they're all drinking the energy drinks. Well, how the heck are you gonna sleep if you just downed a bunch of caffeine? So keep the caffeine away from the kids, especially after 11 o'clock in the morning. If you want them to be able to fall asleep at a routine basis, kind of watch what they're drinking. Don't let them do too much soda. Don't let them do cola drinks because they have a tendency to have caffeine in them. The energy drinks definitely have caffeine in them. Chocolate has a little bit of caffeine in it, certain types of chocolate anyway. So just be cognizant of what your kids are eating in the second half of the daytime so they don't have any caffeine on board. There are other stimulants. My children both have ADD, and if they take their ADD medicine after 5:30 in the morning, they can't sleep at night because that stuff lasts like 12 hours. And so if you're like me and you have kids who have to be on certain medications, make sure they're taking them early enough in the day so as not to interfere with their sleep patterns. Now, blue light screens, that means your computer screen, the phone, should have blue light filters to them if you can help it. In your home, try to have natural lighting or incandescent type light bulbs as opposed to LED lighting, or somehow get a blue filter on these lights, because blue light stimulates sort of like midday to the deepest recesses of your brain. I know we feel like we're modern people, but our anatomy is tens of thousands of years old, right? So your eyeballs see a blue wavelength, and even though you don't perceive that as being blue, deep in the pineal gland of your brain, you think it's daytime. It's not time to sleep. So this can definitely throw off someone's sleep wake cycle. Take the phone out of the bedroom at night. I was kind of surprised when my kids hit high school how often their friends are starting to text them in the middle of the night. Like, we literally had to confiscate cell phones in the middle of the night in our family because I'm like, you should not be texting people at 1 o'clock in the morning. That's crazy talk. You're sleeping. You're supposed to be sleeping. You can talk to your friend tomorrow, right? So confiscate the cell phones if your child is old enough to have a cell phone. Don't let them watch TV for an hour or two prior to they going to sleep. In their bedrooms, try not to have real bright LED lights. Make sure everything has a blue screen. You want to make sure their room is sort of cool. It's easier to sleep in a cool room, not one that's so cold that they're freezing all night. That keeps me from sleeping. But a cool room helps you sleep, and a quiet room helps you sleep. If you live in an apartment complex in a big city, if your child is in college and they live in a dorm, there's going to be a lot of noise. You may want to engage in like sound foam or something like that. My daughter is a musician, so her room had a lot of sound foam in it because she records her music in her room. That was very helpful because it kept her room quiet. They do make the little wave machine. Now, you can get an app on your phone, actually. I just told you to take the phone out of your room. They do make white noise machines. I guess that's the best way to describe it. Where it can just sound like rain or just like a gentle wave or something to this effect that offsets other people's conversations or music or TV shows, something that your brain might find fascinating. This way, it scrambles all that, and it's a little easier to sleep in an ideal world, perfectly quiet room. Don't use your bedroom for business. So don't let the kids do homework in their bedrooms. Don't let them play on the computer in their bedrooms, because that means your brain is learning that the bedroom is a place to work or be entertained as opposed to a place to sleep. Now, I have lived in small apartments with my kids where there's like one room. And so it can be difficult. If there's a way that you can partition out a place for them to play, to do homework that's not physically in their bedroom, that's ideal. Or at a minimum, don't let them do those things in the bed itself. Have a little desk off to the side or sort of partition things off so their brain doesn't associate bedroom as a place to be awake, alert, and studying or being entertained. Okay. The other thing that I would say is stress can keep you awake at night. A big test, if they had a fight with their friend, or maybe kids are making fun of them because they don't have the fancy shoes. That was me when I was growing up. We didn't have much money, and I'm not into fashion. So I understand peer pressure can lead to a lot of stress. Social media can lead to a ton of stress. So be cognizant of this, and even very young children are subject to that. If you and your spouse argue a lot, or if you have an older child that argues with you or argues with the other child, that's all stress. And so do your best to mitigate stress in your own life because that will actually help everyone sleep at night. And engaging in those things is what we call sleep hygiene. There are some supplements that one can take, and caution with children. Not a big fan of giving children supplements. Teenagers, like for my kids, magnesium and zinc and vitamin D are three things most modern human beings are low on. Do your best to use whole food sources of these things if you can. Um, you can use natural food sources or just sort of organically sourced whole food vitamin supplements, which is tended to be what I did with my kids to make sure it went down the hatch. These things have a tendency to help them sleep. Those metals, zinc and magnesium, are important for a lot of biochemical responses in your body. They can help you organize some sleep. B complex vitamins, omega 3 fatty acids, all of these things can help with sleep. Melatonin, you have to have caution because small children can get overdosed with melatonin. Melatonin. That is a known issue. I have given my kids melatonin, very, very low doses, but they get one dose. They do make child dosed, like in the pediatric area, like for a school age. I would never give a kid younger than 10 a melatonin, but and just because and I don't even know if it's indicated in the pediatric aisle of the vitamins. You may want to read supplements, but a dose for a child is like 0.3 milligrams. And the problem is the adult might give that child multiple doses because the kid won't sleep, or give an adult dose. Now, adults can take a lot of melatonin, 10, 20, 30 milligrams. A child cannot. I think 0.3 is the suggestion for kids over maybe 10 or 12, and don't quote me on that, but I just hear me now. If you have a school-age child, try not to give them the melatonin situation. A teenager in high school is probably safe, especially if they're adult-sized. In herbal supplements, in tea format, like so my children, we usually would make like chamomile tea. And I had a little dropper of magnesium that I'd put some magnesium into some chamomile tea with some honey. And and made it warm. And that was part of the bedtime routine after a hot bath. And so those things, I put lavender in their hot bath. You can even put a little Epsom salts in their bath that has magnesium in it, with a little lavender essential oils or something like that. And that tends to help kids sleep without worrying about dosages and giving them too much. And so it's also the reason we'll talk about super patch. There's no medications in that. So I like that. So you don't have to worry about any overdosing, anything. A clean diet, avoiding sugar, avoiding wheat, avoiding artificial colors, artificial sweeteners. All of those things are important for a normal microbiome. And so a clean diet, when they wake up in the morning, feed them their kiwi fruit. Why? It's high in vitamin C. It's high in prebiotic fiber. It's got a good digestive enzyme in there that's going to help them digest their breakfast. And it tends to keep their guts pretty stable unless they're allergic. And there are some people who are allergic to that sort of thing, in which case you may have to choose other alternatives. But a clean diet, inulin is a prebiotic fiber. So if your child has a lot of food allergies, try inulin and see if they can tolerate that. You can do some mushroom-based powders. Chaga and reishi tend to help with sleep, but there are oxalates in that. There are flavonoids in that, phenols in that. All of those things tend to help with sleep and help with gut health. However, too much of that may be an issue. So when you're talking about children, ask your pediatrician if that's something that's okay for children to have. As an adult, I do take a little quarter teaspoon of a reishi mushroom when I go to bed, and it helps me with sleep. And then of course, I take my valerian root tea, and that also helps, as will chamomile. Mitigating stress is huge for me in particular in what I do for a living. My kids got their ADD from somewhere, so their lives can be kind of chaotic, and so mitigating stress for them is minimizing chaos. That means we prepare for tomorrow today. Get everything ready for tomorrow now, before tomorrow. I don't want to be doing this tomorrow morning because then you get ramped up in the morning, and then that adrenaline spike will last you all day long and cause stress, and that can interfere with your sleep. Make routines. We talked about bedtime routine. Get exercise, do some stretching. All children need to run around. That's part of how they learn, and it's how they grow. It's how they learn how to socialize and problem solve. Children need to play, and they need to be outside playing if it's safe, as long as they're being watched. The modern world can be a little crazy, but if you have organized sports and you can send your kids to that, that is awesome. Getting some sunlight. Everyone's very sensitive about, sunscreen because of skin cancer risks, and I definitely understand that. But if you can let them get if a little bit of sunlight without too much of the sunscreen, in my opinion, that is helpful. If they're gonna be out in the sun for hours on end, yes, they get the sunscreen. But just to go to school and go from your car to the schoolroom in the 15-minute recess, the kids don't get much time for recess, so they can be in the sunlight, and it's very helpful. I know people are sensitive to that topic, and I'm sure I'm going to get comments. "How dare you suggest being in the sunlight without sunscreen?" I mean, honestly, let your children see natural sunlight, it's helpful. There are some for teenage kids and for adults. There are some adaptogenic herbs, ashwagandha and rhodiola and ginseng. These things help with stress. Rhodiola and ginseng should be taken in the morning because they can actually wake you up, whereas ashwagandha can help at night. So throughout high school, my son insisted that I made him a chamomile tea that had a little ashwagandha in it and some magnesium and zero point 0.3 milligrams of melatonin. And that was his nighttime tea. And he and I drink tea together before I set him off to bed. And that boy, I literally, even as a senior in high school, was going to bed at 7:30 because he had to wake up at 5 in the morning to go to football practice. So he got his 10 hours of sleep, and the chamomile tea definitely helped him. So the peace patch. Now the boy does the peace patch also. That is for stress. My daughter does a peace patch. She does a focus patch. My son does the focus patch. They're ADD. So those two patches for ADD, very helpful. And at night, there's an REM patch from the Super Patch Company. What does a super patch do? So if you've never watched any of these videos, let me give a quick primer on the beauty of this technology. Now, when you heard me say that there's no medicine in this patch, you probably thought, well, then it's a sham and it's a scam. But I've had people tell me that. I sit on their medical board. I see the research. Trust me, it's not a sham. In fact, it's based on Nobel Prize winning science. The observation that the skin, by way of calcium ion channel signaling mechanisms, will communicate with your brain. And if those signals are sent at very specific patterns to your brain, you can isolate different neurologic pathways within your brain. It's very cool technology. You can prove this is happening with EEGs. One of my prior talks, we talked about the very cool paper that I read. In fact, the owner, the creator of Super Patch made me read this paper because it was fascinating. And yes, Jay, that was an amazing paper. And it outlined that disease before it happens can be diagnosed with an EEG. And of course, the Super Patch Company knows that. They use that type of technology to confirm that the signal they're sending through their patch is talking to the right part of the brain. So this patch, while it has no medicine in it, has a texture that fires off ion channel signals to the brain in a very specific pattern, like a QR code, that your brain recognizes for very specific neurologic pathways. And so the REM patch helps organize sleep. When you put it on, it is not going to make you sleepy like any sleep aid. Like if you took Benadryl to help you sleep, it makes you sleepy and then you're hungover. CBD oil, I'm trying to think of all the different things people take to help them sleep. Those things, yeah, they make you sleepy, and then you have a hard time waking up because it's a medicine and it is hard to dose. You can't necessarily wake up when you want to, and you wake up with this hangover effect. These patches, when you put it on, if it's not bedtime, if you're not in your routine, if you're not laying down and your eyes aren't closed, you're not going to feel sleepy. And there are a lot of people who say, well, that patch doesn't work because it didn't put me to sleep. It's not going to put you to sleep. What it's doing is when you lay down and you close your eyes because you want to go to bed, it helps your brain organize all of those signals to start the pathway of the cycles of sleep. And so sleep happens in 4 different phases, 4 different cycles. And so when you're laying down, eyes closed with this patch on, your brain kind of senses, okay, it's time to start organizing some sleep patterns here. So people who wear this patch go to sleep quicker and they have a tendency to have higher quality sleep and can sleep for a longer period of time. Now, it can take a couple of weeks before you reach the maximal benefit, simply because sleeping is kind of a learned behavior. And these patches cannot overdo an entire cup of coffee, your ADD medicine. If you're fretting about a test tomorrow or some other anxiety, this patch cannot override that. Okay, because those signals are stronger than the sleep organization signal, which is why the sleep hygiene is critical. But one of the things you can add to your sleep hygiene is this patch. And it does work incredibly well. If you're someone like me who cannot take a medicine to sleep, because I have to be able to wake up, answer a phone, and possibly go to a hospital alert enough to operate on a person. You don't want me hungover, and you don't want me asleep, and you don't want me on drugs. This patch is fantastic for people in my profession, people who travel a lot for business, pilots, firemen, police officers, all of us who really can't engage in sedative medications. This is the perfect answer for us. So when you use this patch in combination with the proper environment, the proper diet, it helps you stabilize the sleep system and to allow proper function. A simpler way of understanding how these patches work is kind of like a record player, where the patch is the record, your skin is the little needle that reads the grooves, and your brain is simply the amplifier that turns those little squiggle groove vibrations into a sound that people can hear as your favorite song. And each one of these patches is a different song on an album, if that sort of helps you understand that. So when we talk about Super Patch, we're not talking about drugs. They are drug-free. There are no contraindications to using them. You can use them at any age. I mean, we would caution if you have a kid who peels stuff and puts stuff in their mouths, put it someplace where they can't reach it, or don't let them have access, because, it's a piece of plastic. It can have a choking hazard. That would be the one thing I would caution people against. If you are allergic to certain topical adhesives, you may or may not have a skin reaction like you would a sensitive Band-Aid. The adhesive is made by the 3M company, and they have a skin sensitivity Band-Aid. Just think of surgical tape for sensitive skin. It's not latex. But some people are still having a reaction to that. Probably about 1% of the people who use these devices will have that sort of skin reaction. So that would be the biggest complication. When it comes to sleep, a peace patch and an REM patch are the top two. If you are wanting to have overall health, I would throw a Liberty patch onto that. If your child is an athlete, maybe instead of Liberty, try that Victory patch, because that will help improve their athletic skills, prevent injuries as a result for being off balance, and it does help reset the autonomic nervous system for you and to achieve a baseline. Okay, so once again, thank you for joining us for our back to school lecture. Next week, we're going to do a second back to school lecture on ADD. So I've been able to get my children off of ADD medicines with a combination of a clean diet, lifestyle changes, and these patches. I'm not saying that can happen for your children, but I'm happy to share what I did for my children, and that's how they're living their lives now quite successfully. Both of them are honors students and launching into adult life, and I'm very proud of them. And I'm proud to say that I have used Super Patch for the last year and a half to help them achieve that. If you will go to our website, drannatoker.com/shop-love, that will be a products that I love area, and you'll see Super Patch. You'll also see our new probiotic called Zyve 7. It's more than just a probiotic. It's a digestive aid that's designed to improve digestion. You take those basically before meals to help absorb nutrients. Good gut health is critical to good mental health and proper sleep patterns. And so check that out. And then if you're listening on Spotify, I will have these slides available on my website. So until next time, I'm so glad you joined me, and we see you guys next week.